viewers joining us here in Tigray and all around the world. I'm Salome Tigrai and this is Tigray Television. Here are today's news. Over 50 civilians killed and more than 70 injured in another round of aerial attack in Adadaro earlier today. On his Twitter page, member of Tigray Central Command Getachew Reda said, the attack was conducted by Ethiopian and Eritrean forces targeting IDPs that were displaced from Shararo following the offensive waged by Eritrean forces. The airstrike comes just days after an aerial bombardment of the town that has killed numerous residents and destroyed civilian property. Member of Tigray Central Command Getachew Reda said that Tigray Defense Forces has withdrawn from northern Wello to deal with the involvement of Eritrean forces in the northwestern part of the country. Getachew stated that Tigrayan forces have never had the intentions of seizing territories in other regions, adding that recent advancements were to force the Ethiopian government to agree to a peaceful resolution.
In the first place, it was never our intention. Second, our intention was about forcing the hands of the regime to agree to peace, which it is not ready to. Third, there is an increasingly more violent and more potent involvement of the Eritrean forces that's coming from the northwestern part of the country, and we have to deal with that challenge head on. And that's pretty much why we are withdrawing our forces from northern Wello. So it doesn't change the fact that if and when there is a military need for us to go back to northern Wello or other part of the country, would still be free to do so. But we are trying to send a message to the people of Amara that we're not particularly interested in land, we're not particularly interested in territory, we are more interested in what we can do with territory than what that territory represents on its own.
Getachew Reda also criticized the international community for its indifference with regard to the continued aerial attacks in different parts of Tigray, including the bombardment in Adadaro.
The international community obviously is complicit with what Abiy is doing, what Isaias is doing, by not saying enough is enough. That much I can say is how problematic the role of the international community is. These people have perfected killing into an art form. They have been killing thousands for the last 2 and so years, and yet the international community is conspicuously missing in when it comes to taking action rather than making sort of perfunctory statements or concerns about the negative role they are playing. So what exactly the international community can say is a function of what it is ready to say. And as far as we're concerned, the international community should live by the very principles it professes in public, the very principles it continues to say it upholds. Unless it does so, we know we are on our own. We will be doing everything in our power to reverse the effects of the campaign against us. If Isaias is allowed to have his way in this region, it's about Isaias controlling the levels of power in the entire region and doing everything according to his capricious demands. And I don't think it's going to be in the best interest of Europeans or Americans or the international community at large for Isaias to exercise an oversized influence in this region. As is, he has had more than his fair share of influence in the region, and it has not been particularly reassuring. And we don't want that to happen. As far as we're concerned, we believe checkmating Isaias is not a geopolitical choice for us. It is a matter of survival for us. And it would behoove the international community to somehow understand where our concerns lay and do something about it.
Chief Clinical Director of Idar Comprehensive Specialized Hospital, Dr. Kibrom Gebreselassie, said the hospital is not providing adequate treatment to victims of airstrikes in Tigray due to the siege that has depleted medical supplies. In his interview with Tigray television earlier today, Dr. Kivrom said other hospitals in Tigray are also facing similar problems, resulting in the increased number of deaths from otherwise preventable diseases.
Yeah, the siege and the absence of these needed materials, supplies, equipment, they have resulted in increasing the casualties. For example, if there is an aerial bombardment, be it drone or jet, then what people are interested in the number of deaths which happen immediately on those the primary targets. But what we have to see is the subsequent deaths. Unless we treat these patients, unless we have the right medications and we do the right procedures, these patients are going to die anyways. Some of them the next day, some of them after some few weeks. So if we had the equipment, if we had the supplies and drugs, then we could have saved some of these victims of the aerial bombardment and drone attacks. But what happens is they come to our hospital or to other available health centers, but the answer is the same. We don't have the right medicine, we don't have the right equipment, so we don't do the right procedures. So we have to improvise, we have to do what is not recommended by the books or what is obsolete now in the modern medicine. We were obliged to use gloves, to reuse them, to wash them. We have to use expired drugs to treat these patients. Some of the effects will be seen in the future, but the others we are witnessing the deaths of these casualties immediately. So the siege plus the war has significantly devastated the health system, plus it is contributing its own, it's taking its own toll on the number of deaths. So we don't have to see the primarily deaths on the site. We have to count everyone. But everyone is interested whenever there is an attack, whenever, for example, in Adidaro area bombardment, people were interested on the number of deaths the same day. Nobody asked us how many died the next day, on the third, or after a week. So this is very tragic. The number of deaths is going up.
The Tigray Interreligious Council urged the World International Council and the international community to take decisive action to save the lives of millions in Tigray. In an open letter on Monday, the Council warned that a catastrophe that is much worse may unfold if the world doesn't respond soon. Sarun Zagai.
On an open letter issued on October 3, Tigray Interreligious Council Office urged the World Interreligious Council and the international community to take a decisive action to save millions from suffering. On its statement, the Council stated about the gruesome atrocities that the people of Tigray are living in, saying that the vulnerable segment of the society, including women, children, elderly, and people living with chronic illnesses, are faced with multiple challenges. The Council noted that the resumption of attempted invasion on Tigray is further aggravating the humanitarian situation in the region and said that the threat of famine is real. The statement cautioned that the denial of access to school for more than 2 years is putting children's future at risk, as more than 1.7 million students are denied access to education. Based on an assessment conducted by Tigray Bureau of Education, the Council highlighted that after the reopening of schools following the 5-month-long humanitarian truce, only 25% of the expected 2,274,474 children came back to school due to the severe man-made hunger and destruction in Tigray. The letter stated that regardless of multiple attempts made by the Council to call on the international community to take an immediate and decisive action to reverse the humanitarian crisis, the Council stated that Tigrayans continue to suffer and mentioned that Adidaro massacre as a vivid example. The Council warned that if the world doesn't respond in reversing this tragedy and continues to only condemn it verbally, catastrophes that is much worse may unfold. Finally, the Council urged for the international community to put pressure on the responsible parties to financially support the rebuilding of schools and other infrastructures, to immediately end the blockade and allow unfettered access to humanitarian aid, restore basic services, immediate withdrawal of Eritrean and Amhara forces from all Tigray territories, and facilitate the return of IDPs back to their homes, and to establish an independent global body for the investigation of all mass atrocities and prosecution of perpetrators.
Tigray opposition parties Tigray Independence Party and National Congress for Great Tigray wrote to the chairperson of the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia, Berikari Murungi, calling for an action to the ongoing crimes on Tigray, including the use of starvation as a weapon of war. The party said the ongoing crimes are claiming the lives of innocent Tigrayans and stated that it is unacceptable to stand aside waiting while millions of people lose their lives and investigate the aftermath of the crime when it is possible to stop them beforehand. The letter also said that the International Commission has to refrain from involving the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission in its further investigations, saying it would only serve in further concealing the crimes committed by the Ethiopian forces. The Catholic Eparchy of Adigrat called for an immediate end of the suffering of the people of Tigray caused by the war and the siege on the region. In a statement earlier today, the Eparchy stated that its health center in Alitana in Europe had been shelled by Eritrean forces and said that the continued shelling of civilian population in Tigray and the aerial attacks were devastating the living conditions of Tigrayans who are already suffering from the all-encompassing siege. The church stated that the termination of humanitarian operations in Tigray, following the resumption of hostilities last month, has worsened the already dire humanitarian situation in Tigray. The Catholic Eparchy of Adigrat urged on Catholic networks, international and national religious leaders, UN agencies, and all concerned bodies to do everything in their power to end the suffering of millions across the state. The church also expressed its gratitude to the Tigrayan diaspora for their efforts towards ending the war on Tigray. As the war on Tigray, backed by a comprehensive siege, continues, access to adequate health service has become impossible for many Tigrayans across the state, and outbreaks of infectious diseases continue to be reported in the region. Our reporter Sarah Kalali visited Tigray Health Research Institute and spoke with Dr. Hayulum Kahsai, General Director of the Institute, to find out the spread of the diseases and how Tigray is currently dealing with outbreaks.
Throughout history, war has been followed by outbreaks of infectious diseases, and the war on Tigray is no exception. The spread of infectious diseases have been reported in the region since the onset of the war, with malaria and zoonotic diseases being the most prevalent. Dr. Hayulum Kahsai, Director General of Tigray Health Research Institute, says, although outbreak of infectious diseases is common during war, in the case of Tigray, the war followed by the siege that has crippled the health system has made it impossible to deal with outbreaks.
Apart from the war, what's really affecting us is the siege. In fact, regarding to these outbreaks, we have very limited information due to the reasons I have tried to mention. We have communication blockouts, we don't have transportation system, and we don't have reports from the western Tigray, some parts of eastern Tigray and northwestern Tigray, and there is no clear information from the community as well. Even from the reporting health facilities, it's usually less than 30 or 40%, which is the reporting rate, or the data that we are getting is not more than 40%. So if I told you some numbers, this will not tell the exact magnitude of the problem in Tigray right now. So just this can be tips of the icebergs.
Dr. Hayulum said currently the outbreak of unseasonal malaria had become the most prevalent disease, and that health facilities across the state are not equipped to deal with outbreaks, with over 26,000 cases reported this year alone, accompanied by many deaths.
We usually expect some outbreaks, malaria outbreaks in Tigray, but this is unseasonal malaria outbreak. And overall, since the last 1 year, or January 2022, we have above 26,000 cases of malaria cases, accompanied by many diseases, because we can calculate each days because most of the days are in the community. Before resumption of the hostilities again, we have about 1,000 loads of malaria per week. Usual sites around Shiraro, Dasilasi, Abergele, there is high spots of malaria. So at least in above 16 wards of Tigray right now, there is malaria outbreak.
He also added that easily preventable and treatable zoonotic diseases like rabies and anthrax are spreading in the region, and that Tigray's health facilities are not equipped with confirmatory tests or medicines for these diseases.
The last 1 year, of the Gregorian calendar, we have above 450 anthrax cases. We accompanied by many days, followed by many days. Within 1 week, in week 33, we have above 13 anthrax cases with 2 days. So the other surprise with anthrax, even the 2 days were with better treatments that we have. Rabies, as you know, it's a very treatable disease. It's very preventable disease. So this was not our main headache. Now with rabies, we have above 430 cases of suspected rabies cases with around 49 days from rabies. So we have many dog bites. The problem with rabies, one, we don't have this post-exposure prophylaxis. We have dog bites. Other than the supportive care, we don't give them anything because we don't have the vaccine, the treatment for rabies. On top of that, we don't have a confirmatory test for rabies.
According to Dr. Hayilum, the whereabouts of thousands of tuberculosis and HIV patients is unknown, and that is a very serious concern as the disease could be spreading with no way to treat them.
Before the war started, we have about 7,000 tuberculosis cases before the war. So around 89 was MDR tuberculosis. From this, around 7,000. So we really didn't know their status now. Did they really die? Are they surviving? Did they take their medication properly? We didn't know. This is a very serious issue. TB is operating in the community. We don't have confirmatory tests, and the community is being infected, and we don't have. On top of that, we don't have enough medicines. So this is really very, very serious problem. The other is with HIV/AIDS. Previously, before the war, we have around 45,000 clients. 45,000 clients. We were doing regularly CD4 counts and viral load in these health institutes because this health institute was a reference laboratory for the region as a whole. Now we don't have cartilages. We are not doing CD4 counts. We are not doing viral load. So their status is not known. And from some tests that we are doing, the positivity rate of HIV is very alarming.
The doctor also noted that vaccine for preventable diseases that have measles and polio-like symptoms are also being reported in Tigray.
We have many pertussis cases, which is very vaccine preventable. We are seeing in the community measles-like diseases, measles, which is very vaccine preventable. We have seen acute flaccid paralysis-like diseases. We have 6 reports of what you call the polio-like acute flaccid paralysis disease, or what you call polio-like disease. Poliomyelitis. So we were in the era of polio eradication. By now, probably there is polio outbreak in Tigray. We are in the verge of polio outbreak in Tigray. So, as I have told you, we don't have this confirmatory test for polio because that was diagnosed with viral culture. But still, we believe it's operating in Tigray. We have seen clinically, they look like polios.
With the resumption of hostilities, the doctor said that he fears the spread of diseases could worsen as new IDPs are expected, and most respiratory tract diseases are commonly found among internally displaced persons.
There are repetitive shellings, airstrikes, and we expect more IDPs. The respiratory tract infections, the diarrheal diseases, they were very common. From the amount that we were seeing, 70-80% are from in the IDP sites.
Lastly, the doctor said the international community needs to play its part to curb the health crisis in Tigray and avert outbreaks from spreading to neighboring regions.
Opening one corridor for humanitarian troops, and that's possible, quite possible. And the two parts have the responsibility to do this. And it's true for the international community as well. Next is, if that is impossible, airdrops is also another possibility. Non-flying zone can be ordered in Tigray. Why not? It's quite possible. Non-flying zone can be ordered in Tigray. The international community can do this. So the two parties will be ordered. In Tigray there will be non-flight zone. Then, so the aircrafts, they can deliver medicines. That's easy, and that was practiced in different parts of the world.
During the period of occupation of Tigray, Adigrat University was one of the many public institutions that suffered great destruction in the hands of Ethiopian and Eritrean forces. President of Adigrat University, Zaid Nagash, says recent shelling by Eritrean forces continue to target the university. Aila Gabra has more.
Adigrat University's president, Zaid Nagash, says the university has been attacked by the Eritrean and Israeli Ethiopian forces, leaving behind a massive destruction. He also added that these forces have continued to bombard the university's buildings and classrooms using artillery from distance.
During the invasion of 2020, November 2020, Adigrat University has sustained very serious damage, sometimes difficult to express in words. The Eritrean army used the university as its camp to begin with, and they looted lots of property, destruction. The level of destruction that took place was so high, and as though that destruction was not enough, they are also bombarding the university from across the border and from around the border now on a sustained basis. And buildings are collapsing, classrooms and other buildings are collapsing now. And this is as though the original destruction is not enough. The level of destruction that took place in the university. We had one of the best ICT facilities in the country, by the way, right before the war. The ICT facility we had was so modern, and the entire ICT infrastructure completely got out of use.
Zaid also added that the education system in Tigray at large has now been completely shattered, leaving millions of children out of the education system for over 2 years now.
For me, the biggest destruction that happened in Tigray is the destruction that we face in the educational sector. Why? Our kids could not go to school for the last 3 years. It's not only the deaths of civilians, the deaths of innocent, destruction of property, whatever, but we are facing destruction of the human mind.
He also added that Ethiopian political elites should condemn the brutalities of the Eritrean and Ethiopian government and should knock some sense into them.
But there are also civilized ways of addressing these problems. That's what we have seen in different parts of the world. But what happened in Ethiopia is unique in the sense that some unnecessary defamations were created. All kinds of negative talks, all kinds of lies by the elite.
Dr. Zaid finally called on the international community to open its eyes to the reality in Tigray and end the siege that has destroyed the education system, not to mention the lives it has claimed over the past years, and to end all the hostilities that has resumed at the end of August.
We expect, of course, this to be solved within the near future. That's our expectation and our hope, and we hope external actors as well as internal actors will come to their sanity. The level of insanity was very high to now, and we expect the external and internal actors to come to their level of sanity and try to actually redress some of course, it would be very difficult to redress the entire level of loss that has been inflicted on the society, but to redress at least part of it. So the hope is always there. We are very much hopeful, but by the looks of what's happening at present now, it doesn't look that the actors, invaders, are actually able to understand and to leave their level of sanity and come to their senses to really help towards redressing at least some of the damage that took place. This is my take about the university.
Ethnic Tigrayans in Western Tigray have been subjected to gruesome human rights violations, with thousands killed, sexually assaulted, tortured, and over 1 million displaced. Azeb ገብረስላሴ is an internally displaced person sheltering in Sabakari IDP camp in Mekelle. She says her family has been torn apart in their attempt to flee horrific shelling by Eritrean troops. Abra ገብረትንሳኤ reports.
Azeb ገብረስላሴ was displaced from western Tigray and is now sheltered at Sabakari IDP camp in Mekelle, the capital of Tigray. Azeb says she had a good life before being displaced from Humara, and she was able to support her family by running a hotel where she sold food and drink for a living. However, she is now left helpless as her family has been torn apart in their attempt to flee arbitrary shelling that killed and wounded hundreds of residents in Humara. Azeb says life has been tough ever since she left her home, and she is suffering from lack of food and medicine.
Before the conflict, I had a good life. I was able to feed my children as I had a hotel where I used to sell food and drinks for a living. However, after the war, everything is destroyed. Humara was turned into a Holocaust as a result of all the shelling that targeted residential buildings and killed innocent civilians. We had to run in different directions. My daughter fled to Sudan, one of my sons is arrested there, and my other son fled to neighboring Sudan. I made it to Mekelle with my 15-year-old daughter.
Azeb says she had to endure the long and tiring journey to the David, northwestern Tigray, on foot to make it out alive, witnessing unspeakable atrocities on her way from Humara all through Shira.
The
shelling in Humara began in November 10 of 2020. There was a wedding in our neighboring compound, and we heard the shelling landing nearby. Another one landed on our neighbor's compound and killed the bride and an old blind man. Then came another shelling and killed 2 other youths who were attempting to help the poor blind man. We all ran to different directions. When we reached Adabai, it was all a nightmare. We saw bodies scattered all over the ground with some dismantled heads and limbs that were cut off. It was really horrific.
The victim also says that life has become intolerable at IDP camps as she could not get food and medicine for her chronic illness. Besides, she is worried about her children as she couldn't know their whereabouts due to the communication blackout in Tigray.
I'm an HIV positive, so is my 15-year-old daughter. We couldn't get the medicine here, and there is not enough food either. It's so tough here. As you can see, aid supply is not entering into these places, and all the people around who have been helping us with food and clothing could not help us anymore as everything they had has been depleted.
No food aid has reached Tigray since the resumption of war in late August, ending the 5-month-long humanitarian truce in Tigray, and the situation in the IDP camps in Mekelle, like other IDP camps across Tigray, are getting worse and worse. It's high time the international community and aid agents took decisive action to ensure aid reached those in dire need, as every minute of delay to access of basic supplies is costing hundreds of lives of the people of Tigray.
That's all we had for today. Thank you for watching.